Twistzz fans, come here. We have a sick Harry with us, and we have, you know, the bald eagle himself. I don't know if you
You
even like
cannot be
that
the one
nickname
saying this.
anymore. I don't
You've
know
got
if you
about a
even
year
like it.
left.
I don't know. I feel like it's been passed on. EliGE has taken it ever since he shaved his head. But it's still a term of endearment, so I'll take it for now.
As long as it's still a term of
Until the
endearment.
next bald joke catches on, I think it's all good.
Well, we are also with you as a clear Liquid fan in your past days, and a Twistzz fan, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You've put your eggs in some of the Canadian baskets. You've also put your eggs in the OC basket. That one didn't really take off, as we know. But at least we're here to talk about Twistzz and this planned move to FaZe that we don't actually know where it's going to end up. Just overall, before we actually get started, I wanted to get your thoughts overall on what you thought after you heard this move.
I mean, my initial thought was like, oh fuck, how have all roads led back to EliGE? At some point I thought like they had like moved on, like that was the whole thing of trading him away, and then it felt like this is just one of those situations where I feel like 5 different things all came together in the perfect way to make this the best option available. So I mean, I was just like, holy hell, how has that happened? But also, I mean, I don't know. I guess my initial reaction too is also like curiosity of whether Liquid sees this as a long-term play to keep EliGE, or if it's more of like a trial period in their mind until the end of the major cycle or until the end of the year, which is the same thing nowadays. Or if this is something they consider like purely short-term just because it is such an easy opportunity. So, I mean, I don't know. It seems to be like the Liquid side of the announcement hasn't come all the way through. So it does just feel like there's a lot of room for speculation and kind of cool ideas to think about of how this could actually play out.
And on the Twistzz end of things, obviously we had this match at Fissure. They were both playing, and then they ended up having to face each other after this announcement was made.
Yeah.
In lieu of our regular meme slide, Harry has queued up a little one from Jeff that talked about the conflict of interest when these teams are about to play. But we also have to touch on the fact that Twistzz is still going to be on the Liquid roster when they head towards the major, and there's a chance that he might not actually be able to play in the event itself if they don't play enough matches registered with EliGE before that. So Harry, before we get into some further discussion about Twistzz, just walk me through why you put this slide in here.
Well, in lieu of meme slide, I just thought VRS could be the meme, really, because I just find it so funny that they basically they made a rule because of only Pixel, and the end result of the rule is that if you sign a player before the major, they might not be allowed to play for you. And I'm sure Messi will be in the comments telling me I'm misinterpreting it or something, and it's actually a good rule, but I just can't believe it that they need to play 5 matches without Twistzz after he's carried them to the major, basically. And then they still need to go and play 5 matches, otherwise they just screw him over. And the best thing for Liquid to do in this situation is probably to just cancel their Fragadelphia ticket and be like, well, Twistzz, you can't play for FaZe at the major, but you can play for us if you want, and just force them to play. And just genuinely, how's the system designed like this?
I mean, that's like a funny thing in like thought, right? To like be able to do that, but I think you get such a bad PR from that if you're Liquid to go that route. And like, why would you want to force him to play for you? It's clear, I think, at this point, after however long he's been there, the amount of back and forths and reports that have come out of him, like kind of talking with different teams and courting different teams. I think at this point, I think it's just in everyone's best interest to probably be done with it. As funny as that idea would be, I think too, it's kind of interesting from the Liquid side of things. I don't know all the details of what the VRS implications would be, but say you go to like one of these smaller events to get your 5 matches with EliGE before the major, and you end up bombing out and losing. Like, can you lose enough VRS points to then like dequalify for the major? Like, like how much of a risk is it for them to actually have to go play one of these kind of lower tier events and just have a terrible day of Counter-Strike and miss out on the major because they were trying to get enough games with EliGE to use him at the major? So yeah, I don't know. The hard thing with the VRS right now is for me, it's a little complicated, but I think complicated trying to keep up with all the changes and all the implications of the changes and how all the changes intersect with each other, because it is a pretty detailed system. And the sort of the angle that I've taken with it is like this first year is going to be a lot of growing pains, a lot of like learning process. Like you can't just institute this kind of a system and expect there not to be a bunch of bullshit. And I think this is just one of those pieces of bullshit that we have to be able to look at and find a fix for it or find a solution for it moving into the future. And also be able to not get so pissed off about it right now that it, like someone might get screwed because of it, but that's just part and parcel of instituting a new system. And look, that's unfortunate and it's going to do nothing to console the ones who get screwed. But that's kind of the way it is when you bring in something this big and this complex to govern a global Counter-Strike league.
I mean, even on that note, though, so if we put aside the VRS stuff and just talk about the move in isolation for Twistzz joining FaZe again, when we look at that move as a whole, where do you see this in terms of where FaZe are going to go with him overall? Because he's obviously played with a bunch of these players before. We don't actually have confirmation on who he's replacing. People assume it's Rain. There's rumors about whether Frozen's going to Navi. Who knows if that's a thing. And then there's so much rice speculation of, Twistzz taking over as IGL for karrigan, which is just absurd to me. And then people thinking that Jacob's out because he's been here the least amount of times. There's so much going on around this, and nobody actually knows. So in terms of this overall conversation with Twistzz joining the team and where they're going from here, where do you see that landing?
I don't know. That's kind of what's weird, because when this trade happened, I was pretty sure it was going to be Rain, and that's kind of not been announced yet, which also makes things weird. So I get the feeling like they're still kind of deciding, like they haven't for sure figured out exactly who he's going to slot in for. I think it's probably, I mean, my initial thought on it from like the Twistzz perspective is like a couple of things. I was like, kind of a bummer to see him leaving Liquid now, just as it feels like they've gotten enough stable and effective pieces to actually make some progress. I think culminating with the pickup as flashie as a coach, who I think is a pretty underrated pickup, and hope to see him do well. The other thing is, if you're leaving Liquid because you're tired of dealing with the mess of people coming in and role clashes and things not working out smoothly and not everyone feeling comfortable, it's not like you're going, you're not going to a place where all that is there. You're going to kind of a very similar situation as FaZe's. I mean, it feels like you'd call it a rebuild, or at the very least, they're about as close to like rebuilding as you can get without actually doing it. They're like fighting and clawing to stay in like effective territory of where they can still be competitive and still make dangerous runs. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows over there. So it feels like he's leaving one situation to go to a similar situation, and maybe he just feels more confidence that being with karrigan, being with Brokey, guys that he achieved so much success with, it'll be able to come a little bit quicker. But then, when I think about like him replacing Rain, I think, okay, Twistzz might actually be able to have like, this might actually be kind of cool. Twistzz might be going back to some of his older positions as more of like anchory roles versus when he departed Liquid initially the first time and wanted to be more of a star player and played more centralized and play more like rotatey. Now, I mean, if he's taking over Rain, who changed his roles to take up anchor positions to try and make all the FaZe projects work, Twistzz might be able to slot back into some old school, just like anchoring bomb sites, just being a mechanical turret and just destroying things. So there's some cool things to do with it. I think the harder thing for FaZe is going to be figuring out how they want to utilize him on the T side. I think that's where they've kind of struggled so much lately, is feeling like players out of position and not at the same cohesion to take advantage of everyone's strengths. So I think the T side is going to be the interesting thing, because he's not a playmaker the way EliGE was. So things are going to have to change there again.
Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting one for Twistzz, because I think at the start of this year, he was probably the one most upset out of anyone by the Vitality era, because all the rumors about that, I don't know how true they actually were, but it would have been sensible when he saw the Rops move to be like, oh, I kind of have my eye on Mezzi's spot.
They were very true. They were very true.
Yeah. Because that's like, from Twistzz point of view, like that'd be amazing, because that's the reunion he probably wanted, because that's the future-proof reunion, is the one with Rops, not the one with karrigan and Rain and all the kind of old guys, right? But yeah, the way the year has transpired for Twistzz, it is a bit unfortunate, I think, because his level's still been there. And yeah, like you said, FaZe Liquid, there's kind of, it's two sides of the same coin for me in terms of the role clashes that are going to be there and everything. And I think he is a bit of a unique player in terms of role because, like, where does he really fit? Like, he clearly wanted to some of the space taking roles at some point, but he's been utilized in kind of supportive roles in that old Liquid team. Like, he had some weird roles at the start of FaZe before Rops came in, before like it was all comfortable. Like, it still feels hard to place exactly where Twistz's best positions are, because what he seems to think is his best positions doesn't always seem to line up with what the coaches and in-game leaders think is the way to get his mechanical ability in those best positions.
Sure, and that was a huge issue when I joined Liquid as coach, was Twistzz wanting to play in some more impactful roles, especially on the CT side, and a lot of the team just kind of looking at him. And I mean, look, there's some good logic to it, and just being like, you're way too good as an anchor. Like, you know, we don't have anyone who can slide in and kind of deliver 80% of what you're delivering. So like, we might gain something where you're moving, but we lose so much at the bomb site anchor position that it's hard to kind of justify that move. But I think the nice thing is, especially if you're Twistzz, like, you're coming into a team, I'm not going to call them a full-blown mess, but things have certainly been messy. So I think there's going to be a lot of room for you to have the conversation of where you want to play, of how it can actually work, of how your style can work in this specific role or this specific position. And I think he'll get some of that agency as well from karrigan and from FaZe when he comes back in.
That's something I was going to touch on too, because when he was in FaZe last, karrigan did a pretty good job of trying to find Twistzz the actual spots to play in that had higher impact and that he was more comfortable in. So I think going into that situation is maybe something he's looking to, is something that karrigan can find a solution to put him in those positions to shine. And in terms of going from Liquid to this, I think you're right that it does kind of feel like not quite from the frying pan into the fire, but maybe like from the frying pan into another frying pan right now. And
yeah,
when it comes to that, it's like really hard to determine how they're going to use him right now, because it kind of seems like it's all in flux for FaZe anyway. So I think a lot of people from the conversation I've seen has been talking about them needing 2 changes, and whether that's actually something they'll explore later down the line is, you know, we'll have to see. But in this sense, they kind of did just make 2 changes. They did add Jacob. So I think a lot of people are looking at that and they're still thinking it's not enough. And it's really hard to determine how we're going to see that flex into this role, because there were role overlaps between Twistzz and Frozen, so you're going to need Twistzz to probably take some of those old roles, and then we're going to see how that works in terms of how karrigan wants to use him, right?
What did you make of that? Was it? I think it was a foreign tweet, a classic of just whoever hired Jacob should be fired, and so should Jacob. Basically, where are you? Where are you 2 events into Jacob?
I haven't watched his POV or of his individual play with any kind of crazy intensity to have any strong opinion on him as an individual. I don't think he's been any kind of crazy liability. I don't think he's provided you anything all that crazy that shows him to be a revelation. I don't think it's a lot of time to prove yourself. I mean, Duncan, as he does, likes to go in pretty hard in the paint. And I mean, I guess in some sense, I don't fully disagree, but I think it also is just a sign of where the team is making a consideration financially. If they had 2 million to spend, if they had $1 million to spend in the bank or something like that, they might go out and get a star player. They might go out and actually drop some cash. But I think maybe at this point, and especially with the major looming, I can't really be super critical of a FaZe or of a GM saying, you know what, for the moment, I know this is kind of might hurt me in the long or in the run for this major, but I'm going to stockpile some cash and just see what options I have when the dust settles on the major. Because as we know, it's that off season just usually goes pretty crazy. People are available that you never thought would be available, and you can make some moves. So can't really argue with it, even though it's definitely going to hurt them in the short term. But also, who knows? They might not even end up playing with him at the major. It might be Rain, sticking around and Jacob hitting the bench and being like, okay, we're going to give Rain his one last run. Who knows how it's going to turn out? That's part of the insanity of all this, is not getting the full details from either camp and things as well. So I mean, we're all just kind of playing the waiting game and letting the theories fly.
But I do think it's whether it's Rain or Jacob. I think Twistzz is such a good player for a karrigan system in terms of that versatility actually being useful, because they're one of the only teams who kind of, at least in their prime, were kind of built for that late round, that kind of soldier entry like Rain. Like Jacob can be that soldier, or Rain can just be the soldier entry again, right? And then you do have that Frozen Twistzz, Brokey. Like it's not Rops. The chemistry won't be exactly the same, and it might not be the same formula, but at least it's the kind of same approach where Twistzz can be that really good mid-round player who can offer kind of the right aggression or the right passivity sometimes as well.
Sure, but you also have to think about too, like, I mean, I think he's going to have to be, somewhat more aggressive than like aiming to just be alive in late round situations. I think when you think about it too, even Rain on the T side has kind of moved away from those entry positions. He played him for so long, it shouldn't be terrible of him coming back into it, but I would wonder if he's going to have the same kind of step as he used to. And then also you put like your two kind of older experienced players as your entry guys. karrigan's individual level has been rough. Rain, shaky, as we know, delivers usually in the big games and once you get to the playoffs, but is there going to be enough production out of him and karrigan in tandem together to provide the openings that guys like Twistzz, Brokey, Frozen need to have impact in the late round? I think there's some questions there, but I mean, I think this is one of those trades that oddly enough, I think it's going to make both teams better. I think, Twistzz is going to come in and provide a lot of things. We just saw what he could do for Liquid in this run at Fisher, just kind of hard carrying them in certain maps and certain games into these wins to qualify for the playoffs. And then I think EliGE coming into Liquid is going to be the exact kind of thing that they've needed, that they've lacked, that they've missed, is that the kind of aggressive playmaking player who can get things started for the rest of them. So I think the trade, oddly enough, makes both teams level increase for the major overall, even if you're going to be trading some positives and negatives in different roles in different places.
I think it's important to stress. No, it's brought the slide up already. It's just how good Twistzz has been, kind of despite all the noise around Liquid and everything. Well, there's one stat on this. These are kind of the new radars we've been doing. Not too many stats today. Don't worry, audio listeners. You can still follow us on Spotify. Get the shameless plugin. But there's one stat on this, which is the kind of RLS, which is basically what percentage of round losses do you get a kill, assist, or def traded, basically. So in more than half of the rounds Liquid lose, Twistzz is doing something useful and they're just still losing, basically. Like he's up there with some of the best players at this stat are kind of, Shiro because he's baiting a little bit, and then Yuri, like the good anchors, basically. And Twistzz is one of those players, and he's still got all this huge amount of normal output that you would use to measure kind of traditional star players as well. So I think just overall, Twistzz 2025 has been what I would call elite, regardless of how far his team has gone.
And I think, on one level, I look at this whole situation, this whole trade, and I think like, on some extent, like what a shame, for the entire past like year and a half for Liquid. Like I know Joker Steve catches a lot of flack for some GMing, and there's certainly a lot of responsibility and some things you can point at and place at his feet. But I think also when you think about it, like after the Cadian fiasco where Twistzz takes over as IGL, you're in the midst of one of the career worst slump from Yakinder for 4 months, 5-6 months, as that went on before he eventually dropped out of the team. And then eventually when you get him out, you bring someone in who's performing well for you. You then hit the snag of Naf having like the only first real slump of his career, and it's a fucking doozy as well. And that goes on through the major for like 2-3 months. So on some level, I'm like, this Liquid team, I feel like had more to offer, but you can also understand how Twistzz was probably feeling frustrated performing like this first through the slump of Yakinder, and then they get things righted and they bring in, an IGL, they bring in Nur, it's a top rifle, you're ready to get things going, and it's Naf who drops off a cliff, who's been so reliable for all these years, so you're always just kind of like getting stalled out. And, you can probably point your finger and say, well, there's obviously something within inside the team that's causing these players to have these kinds of slumps. And that's probably true as well. But back-to-back slumps of this nature from two normally very reliable players. You could see what Yakinder's doing for Furia, which is incredible. You get some of that in that Liquid roster that he's part of. Maybe like we don't even get to this point. So on some level, I feel like this Liquid roster is like, what if? What if there wasn't these slumps from these two players? And what if we got them actually, what if we got a chance to see what this team could have been? And unfortunately, they were just never able to get it going. Never able to get a player out of a slump, never able to get that confidence win that might have been able to go on a streak that gives the players a little bit more confidence in the lineup to stick around.
Do you think those slumps happen in isolation, though? Because I think part of it was also just like role changes and overlaps that weren't working out for this team, because you had Naf changed some of his roles. You had Nerds playing slightly different roles, and I think that definitely affected the way the team was actually able to play together. You could see that they weren't on the same page in a lot of rounds. They were also trying to make like really weird moves, where you had like sending Nerds in through smokes a bunch through con, and then the other team was lurking around on B, and then there's another person lurking A, and it was just a bit of a mess for a lot of the rounds that I was watching. Not as much recently, but definitely for the first couple of months in this team. So to that point, I think you're right in that bringing EliGE in should probably help this team, because I think having someone who is trying to be that playmaker, and it's not just Shuhei who's trying to open up a lot of rounds, I think that will help this team a lot. And then you can have Naf back in some of those roles where he's able to play more of the late rounds, and you have Nerds more following up as those trade frags. I think that will help the dynamic a lot.
Oh, I think it's gonna activate Nerds to a level that we haven't seen him able to get to within this team. I think EliGE coming to Liquid is gonna be the most beneficial thing to Nerds' game. We've seen it some time, so I'm excited to hopefully watch that pop off. Give it some time to breathe and see how they can actually make things work, because that could be really cool having EliGE and Nerds firing on all cylinders. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think they happen necessarily in isolation. I think they were probably prolonged due to poor mentality as a team and probably as individuals. I think, the Yakinder one, he talked openly at some point. It's just all down to his mentality. Nafs, I was having conversations with him through his slump, and I think that was, the majority of that was a lot of mentality and a lot of just, beating up on yourself. And I think that extended them longer than when they needed to be. But certainly the chaos of, and this is the thing I'd probably criticize most from Steve's GMing decisions, would be the KD and bringing him as an IGL. Hearing what the players complained about under the KD and era as an IGL, of not having enough prep, not having a game plan outlined enough that the rest of the players could feel comfortable of knowing what's coming, playing too much off intuition and off impulse in the moment. Those are things that I think could have been prevented, but certainly the swing to that style and then the swing back when Twistzz took over reins and as a brand new IGL, it didn't help anyone. That's for sure.
But it was more of like a kind of personality failing, at least the original roster, than a role failing. At least from the outside, I think I remember I wrote quite a positive article about that move, because in my head it was like, well, Cadian's coming off a lot of good press despite the stabby situation
runs, for sure,
and everything. But the other thing I want to say about Twistzz is, what is it with his dead team buff? Because when he left FaZe as well, they knew he was leaving for a lot of those early CS2 wins as well. It's there does seem to be something where, because the Liquid we saw at this Fisher Playground is the one I've wanted to see the whole time, because I was a big fan of the Shuey move at the time. I was a big fan of the Nerds move at the time, even if the roles were obviously going to be a little bit different to how he was in Heroic and End. So I still thought that there has to be something in this much talent in a roster together.
The Cadian one?
Well, even this one with just Nerds, Twistzz, Nav, that just seems like a rifling trio that should kind of eventually work, even if Nerds' aggression had to be channeled in a different way than when he was lurking. Well,
I mean, this isn't to lay everything at Twistzz' feet, but I do think at some point during this, he, I don't want to say checked out mentally, but I think he checked out of the idea that Liquid is going to be a long-term thing for him. I think at some point he made the decision in his head, I'm going to leave this team eventually, and just as time wore on, I think that makes it harder to stay, no matter how much you try to stay as focused and as intense about the Liquid side of things. And Twistzz is a professional. I mean, I went through this with him previously when he was going to leave the team when I was coaching as well, and he stuck with it as well and played through right to the end. But yeah, I mean, it's any dead team buff. It's always you let go of the stresses of trying to fix problems, and you actually just play the game, and you have all the conversations in your mind. All the information that you've always needed to do throughout this whole thing is there, but you stop gripping so tightly to try and make things work, and you stop stressing so much, and you stop focusing on it, and you just kind of play. And that solves so many problems towards the end, because you're no longer, anyone can be like, oh God, the last 6 months has been this terrible fucking attitude and environment that I don't even want to play in. But when it's the last tournament together, you don't care. You're like, I'm not actually angry going in today's game because it's over. It's done. So, I mean, I think that's just the dead team buff in a nutshell. I don't think it's specific to Twistzz or anything like that. Although he does seem to have some pretty good dead team runs. That's just a happy coincidence.
It's the Nerds booms. I think it was the FaZe game. And it was almost like he was taking the piss out of themselves. It's this is what a team with good atmosphere would be doing, guys. I'm going to start shouting boom 5 times at the end of every round. It's it actually works. They kind of trick themselves. It's just
And
the whole dead team is the whole thing.
It's really frustrating because you're just like, because I put the tweet out the other day of like, what kind of liquid watcher or this morning are you? Are you the one who watches and says, oh, look at what this team could have been? Or are you the one who watches and say they're only playing like this because they're dead? But it does suck to look at this and be like, this level was there the whole time. And if this was coming out more often, and if we got this more often, maybe we could have strung some wins together and this lineup could have worked. But yeah, it certainly seems like, again, they were holding on so tight trying to make everything work that when they let go, they're able to actually have some fun playing together and things worked out. And obviously it feels really good when you're qualifying for the major and going on a streak and beating 3 teams in a row and gaining VRS points and making the playoffs. Yeah, it was all good things that they haven't had before with that lineup.
Do you think that mental shift that Twistzz will have to do now moving to FaZe after being in that kind of mindset for so long is going to be something that he's able to resolve quickly, though? Because he's not going into a phase that's, I wouldn't say they're dysfunctional, but they're not functional either at this point. Do you think that's going to hinder him as he moves to this team, or will it be like more of a snap back to how it used to be in a way because he's going to be back with karrigan?
I think it's karrigan. I think it's Brokey as well, and even probably to a certain extent Frozen, despite the role clashes. But I think they'll be more open to having some conversations and figuring that kind of stuff out. But I think once you get back, when you're rejoining 2 former teammates, I mean everything's going to fall right back into place as it used to be as soon as you get there. So I don't think it'll carry over. I think there's going to be like a really I hesitate to say a honeymoon period because I don't necessarily believe the performances are going to be there, but I think the attitude in that team is going to be fucking off the charts positive for that first event. I think.
I just hope it isn't the kind of waiting room. Like I will get to Liquid in a bit, I'm sure, but like that kind of FaZe 2021 waiting room team when everyone sort of thought Rops was coming, and it was just you could never really fully start to analyze how the team was playing because there was always an asterisk. Like I hope this team is, whether they decide on Jacob or Rain is that kind of 5th. And they do manage to keep Frozen at least for a while. Like I want them to at least commit to something and not have that kind of, because you don't want anything holding the Twistzz back from getting into that kind of full focus mentality that you've been talking about, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I guess that's the question: is how much of a chance does Jacob truly have to prove that he can deliver in a position on this team, right? Like, is it over now? Was it just the 2 events that he just played, or are you going to get it play through the major? But I mean, I would say expect FaZe to be a waiting room until after the major and see what move they make, see what happens. Because we don't really know, because I think it's also like, I think the biggest problem with FaZe is like, it feels like they don't have a long-term plan in place. And that is going to, and the next move they make, I feel like is going to be a huge indication of what route they want to take, of how aggressive they're going to be of trying to win now one last time with this kind of core lineup, or if they're going to shift into like the next plan for how FaZe wants to operate in CS. Like, are you going to try and pull the trigger on karrigan eventually switching to coaching and just having him transition straight into coaching from IGL? Are you going to try and replace karrigan or tell him he's done as a player there? Are you going to do that to him? Rain, is he going to leave? And like, depending on which decision they make, lets you know what kind of decision they're gearing up for after the major. At least in my mind, that's kind of what I'm waiting to see.
I just think they, as an org, I just want them to professionalize a little bit more, because I think you just, like, I think I asked karrigan about it at London, and his answer was basically like, oh, I think it's, people are unfair a little bit. They care more than you think in terms of the management and everything. Like, it's not what it used to be. But you still look at them at events, it's them and Eddie, and they probably have an analyst at home. And when you talk to karrigan about roster moves, he's very quick to not say, like, it's not my decision. Like, I make sure they ask the whole team and everything, but it's like, they're asking the team. Like, it's still kind of a backwards way of doing things when you compare it to these kind of super orgs. And obviously then GMs get a lot of heat, like Pets or whatever gets a lot of heat for the different reason. But I do think you look at karrigan when things are going wrong and you're like, there's so much pressure on this guy to just have the solutions in lots of different departments, when someone like Apex doesn't have to worry, because Neo will just sign Rops when he has one bad season or something for Vitality. So it's that kind of thing that's just makes me worry a little bit for FaZe in the kind of when they're competing against all these teams that, like, Vitality have just had a data analyst as well. They're just, the volume of staff is so different compared to FaZe.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll go there. I mean, one quick point on that. I don't know if Neo over at Vitality would sign Rops or someone like Rops, if he was just having one quick year, but he'll definitely sign him for free, out of no contracts. I don't know if he's going to go out and say, oh, we really need this 5th. Is he going to blow the bank to like do a buyout and get the salary going for someone to come into the team? Or was he just like, oh, free Rops, that's cool. I'm with you though. I know what you mean about FaZe. I think they have a decent staff, and I would believe karrigan when he says they probably get a little bit too much flack, that there's more people than the fans think. But I do think I'm with you, and I agree 100% that they lean too heavily on karrigan, and I think that's part of the reason why they're in such a hard place, because you can go to a karrigan and have karrigan allow the whole team to have input, because karrigan is going to shield you from any terrible ideas. But if you're still doing the player vote for who their fifth is going to be when karrigan's gone, and you don't have that person who's been in, competing for 15 years at the helm of teams for like 10 years, then I think that gets into a little bit trickier territory. And maybe that would change if karrigan was gone. Maybe they realize that as well. But I mean, I would say in the current climate of esports, I wouldn't expect any kind of significant upgrade in the number of back-end staff on some of these teams.
No. I think it's just, I see a direct line from losing Twistzz and Robs, who are players that you should have sold for a lot of money, to now having to sign someone like Jacob mid-season. Like those things are connected in terms of where the management has led to.
I was going to say, like, the whole point with FaZe not actually having built for the future now is the biggest problem, because they lost Robs, they lost Twistzz. They were considered one of the teams that had these promising talents who actually could be a long-term build for the org, and then they have basically been struggling to rebuild from losing them ever since.
That's why I think the strategy that FaZe is going to have is going to be interesting, because I believe, I mean, I've never really been told this, but looking at the timeline of how it all worked out, I believe they lost Rops because they wanted to do one last run at the major in Shanghai. I think that point of when they were like, we either need to re-sign Rops now or let him go now to try and bring someone new in for the Shanghai major, like what's the best option? And they wanted that one last run for the trophy, not bring somebody new in and go from there. So I think that was their strategy then, was give this a last hurrah, forsake the extra signing. That's what I believe, at least. So we'll see what they do in this particular moment. But yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, not getting any kind of a buyout money for two players, Twistzz going to Liquid for free, Rops going to Vitality for free, definitely hurt them, especially when you consider how high the stocks were after a dominant year and a half from FaZe, with a major, with two major grand finals, second places, with a grand slam. Like, those guys would have been a shit ton of cash.
And now you look at it, like, they've added Jacob as basically like a bid to try and have that young player and try and build them up, but it feels like it's been such a downhill spiral for so long that they have such a mountain to climb. Whereas if they'd done this earlier, or they had a better base earlier with younger players, it would be a little bit easier to do. So I actually think, just on that point, Jacob has a lot of pressure on him because he's being put into this situation as a rookie, and people are already hating him so much because he's not bringing FaZe back up to the top, when that's not a realistic expectation.
Yeah, it's really unfair for him from the public perspective at the very least, but also that's what you get when you join FaZe.
Yeah,
like that is exactly. just part of being that brand and being with those teams. But again, like I look at it and I say, like, I don't know, I kind of look at it and I'm like, I think it speaks more to the situation the team was in at the time than necessarily what they wanted to do. Like, that tells you how much they wanted to try and get, like, how quickly they wanted to get EliGE out of the roster, to not have these kind of things like set in place for the actual change when you pull the trigger on it. I think they just knew at that point that it wasn't going to work, and like there was going to be no improvements made at that particular point, and they didn't have money, and they needed a quick fix, probably because some of these roster lock situations. And I mean, don't quote me on this, I'm pretty sure it's true. Isn't Jacob from the team that karrigan's wife is the mental coach of?
Yes.
Yeah, was previously playing for him. And I'm not saying that in any kind of like nepotism way. I'm saying it because I think they just absolutely needed to find someone very, very quickly. And she had like an inside track on someone who was going to be cheap, and said he's got a good mentality, plays the game well, good at communicating, good at working with other people. And there you go. That's how I imagined it happen. So for me, you can criticize the move all you want, but for me, it comes from a position of how weak and precarious FaZe is in terms of their roster at the moment.
And to put my cards on the table, I'd rather they keep Jacob than Rain, I think. I mean, I know how well he's done in these anchor roles, but I just think if you're going to put the resource into signing Twistzz back and having that kind of that salary expenditure on Twistzz and Frozen, then let them be your star players and have Jacob as the kind of young guy who doesn't have to be a win now signing. Like when they signed EliGE, that was a win now signing. He was 28 already. Like that had to work quickly, or they were going to remove him quickly, which is what's happened. And I think for Jacob, it just has to be, I'd like them to reset expectations a little bit, because like it's been years now. Like we don't need to pretend the FaZe could be winning trophies after every roster move. And I think even internally, that's the attitude. I know that has to be the attitude. Obviously, like for me to question that, is the attitude is harsh. But I think like even when, I don't know, you think of some other moves, people always kind of say top four first. But if you speak to karrigan, he's like trophies. I've not got long left is the implication, and I want to win trophies.
Yeah.
Which is hard to couple with signing a 19-year-old who is obviously going to be raw and take time like Jacob.
And you can see it in those interviews that he gives too. Like the frustration's very much setting in and has set in and still repeatedly comes up. Like, yes, there is that vlog obviously where he was probably the most frustrated he's been. But even in interviews after that, you can see that he's not happy. And I think over time, when you're constantly aiming for trophies like that and you're in a position where it's just not the reality, I think you do have to reset those expectations in a way. Like you do have to give yourself a little bit more lead time, even if you're karrigan, because if you want to win more trophies, like it'll come. But at the same time, like you have two players who are basically on the verge of retirement. In that sense, like Rain has talked multiple times about, maybe stepping down from playing. Karrigan's also been on the precipice, whether it's going to happen in a year, 2 years, whatever.
Yeah.
That conversation's been around for long enough that there's desperation for winning trophies, but it's not the realistic position the team has been in for the last little while.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that drive is just always there. I mean, I think that's what karrigan's probably learned at some stage in his career. Where I mean, there's players for the most part have that mentality of if you're not first, you're last, and especially for someone as karrigan who had to wait a long time in his career to start winning those trophies. Yeah, this has got to be particularly stressful when you got to a moment where you were racking them all in and now you've kind of gone back down. So it's that cycle, and I think there's the frustration of exactly the problem that we're talking about is. He doesn't know what the good solution is. There's no like good route placed in front of him. Do you play for the long game, which isn't going to bring you those trophies you're after, or do you play for the short game, which has a lower chance of success, but is really kind of all you've got at the moment? It's kind of but again, this is why I've said for like the past year, I feel like FaZe is a team not headed to like a quiet drop off where they just kind of fade away. This is a team that's about to hit a brick wall. And I think everyone in FaZe sees that brick wall coming. And now it's scrambling to try and figure out a solution to what's happening. And I mean, anything is going to end it, right? Like if these frozen Na'Vi rumors end up being true, or what if FaZe have a rough major or a rough event coming into it? What if enough conversations have already happened to where Frozen inceptioned into his mind is this idea of him joining Na'Vi and playing under Blade and playing under Alexi's leadership? Like there's so many things that could be going wrong. It's got to be chaos over there. And I don't think anyone, even from the outside, I don't think anyone has a good solution to the position that FaZe is in. And you made the point about, that is kind of reaping what you sow in terms of letting two players go for free, that you're not able to make effective roster moves. Well, this is the even longer term eventuality of not being able to do that and not ever setting up a system where the roster is properly changing over for the future either.
Let's just hope Twistzz didn't sign a 4-year contract, because that sounded a bit like a house of cards, what you were describing with Frozen and karrigan.
It feels that way, doesn't it? Because no one knows what's happening. But I mean, it feels like this level of frustration with it'd be one thing if they were losing but feeling like they were making progress. But because they've never dropped so far down, the progress at this point is like having to beat the top 3-4 teams, and they're nowhere near that, which is the hardest thing for FaZe right now.
You were talking earlier about maybe them having a honeymoon phase with Twistzz coming in. I mean, with the potential that he might not be at the major, who are they taking on this honeymoon in the first place? We don't even know if it's going to be something that we're going to be able to see for this year. Like, are you actually taking your new fiance wife to the major, or are you going to end up with
Skulls?
Bring
Skulls back,
a different player. So it is a bit of a weird period in that sense. But I wanted to pick up on something you said about their buyouts, because as a way to transition to talking about Liquid a little bit, because the whole point about this, and I think it was either you or Sponge who mentioned it on Talking Counter, is that the idea or the I guess thing that's being floated around is this is working out because Liquid and FaZe are doing a swap where they're having Twistzz come into FaZe and then they're giving EliGE to Liquid with minimal money movement because neither team seems to want to pay big buyouts right now. So when we have this move happening and you have EliGE going in towards Liquid, obviously we touched on it a bit earlier, but as a move that, you know, we're seeing Liquid play a little bit better now, you're seeing some of these issues resolve. How do you think that this will actually affect them going into this major and the next couple of months?
I think they're going to be really good too. I think actually Liquid could be like a little dark horse for the major. Like if you go in expecting them not to be able to do anything, but I have a lot of faith in flashie from what I've heard out of him so briefly into his coaching. I mentioned this on Talking Counter as well with the guys. flashie and EliGE already have like a pre-existing relationship from having just conversations at events over the years. He was a former coach of EliGE's partners team in the Impact League. So that's kind of how they connected and started talking shop. And I think that connection is going to be huge for EliGE, who I don't think has, at least with his most recent coaches, hasn't really probably had the same connection that he's felt and that he would like to have with this coach in terms of tactically thinking about Counter-Strike. Like I said, I think it's going to make Nertz 10 times better. I think it's going to free him up to a lot of cool things. I think if he's getting those entries, it's going to open up some space for Ultimate. Naf is your closer. Shuhei's going to have a new toy to play with. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this move. It's just kind of, it's just going to be interesting to see what it's going to be. But if they likewise have like an early time honeymoon period, like right into the major, this could be, they could be really deadly and dangerous. And they're also, what's nice for them too, is because they're barely squeaking in, they start stage 1 of the major, or they would start stage 1 of the major if everything stays the same. And then you get all those games to like gear up through the major. So this could sneakily be a pretty strong team going into Budapest. And I know people don't want to hear that. They don't want to like hearing it. I'm not even sure 100% sure it's going to happen, but if they get some of the pieces going their way, if their luck is completely opposite to what they've had for the past 2 years, and you get some pop-offs instead of some fucking, drop into the doldrums, this team could cause a lot of damage. It could cause a lot of damage at the major.
And you've worked with EliGE as well in terms of, because a lot of the FaZe vlogs, you kind of get like a look into it. In terms of, like, he obviously uses all the code names for the strats and things, but this is someone who has an idea on how to play the game. Like, what actually is it specifically, do you think, that didn't work with karrigan and Neo in terms of the tactics?
I think karrigan especially is like a IGL who, just because of his history and where he started playing CS in like 1.6 and all through the early days of CSGO, it hasn't always been this kind of structured level of Counter-Strike. So karrigan, I think, likes to have a lot of creativity to call off of gut, to call off of feel, to call off of his reads. And I was speaking with some of the former Astralis players, talking with them over the years. They're kind of like, you have to have a lot of faith in karrigan's calls, because he does call a lot of things like in the moment, like to just go at that particular second where he has this gut instinct or this gut feel. And he's like, there's only so many times you can follow that and get crushed and still have faith in it. And I think EliGE is more the kind of person who wants to have structure. EliGE wants to know what the progression of the round is going to be. We take map control here. Next step is move into this position and start challenging for this position. Once we have that piece of map control, the defense is going to, he likes to know kind of how things are going to structure and what his options are going to be. I always describe it as kind of like a tech tree. Like you make this move, and if A happens, you go this way. If B happens, you go this way. And he likes to have things a little bit more mapped out, and obviously descends into the insanity if it has to be. But if he doesn't have that kind of plan mapped out in front of him by his IGL and by his coach, I think he feels a little uncomfortable and loses some confidence in what he's supposed to be doing and where he's supposed to be looking for plays. So then he kind of self-neuters himself. And that's part of the reason why I feel this flashie connection is going to be so critical for how Liquid does at the major and with EliGE in the roster.
Do you think that that's going to fit in with the way Shui calls? Because for a long time, Shui was described as, like the new karrigan, the upcomer who is in the vein of karrigan. Do you think that that's going to be something that is going to clash with the way EliGE wants to play in that sense?
I don't know if it'll be his calling. I actually don't know too much about Shuhei's calling in any kind of detail. I know that at times he is an IGL that likes to be involved in making the plays and likes to be an IGL who's getting kind of stuck into the action. And at points, I believe that's part of what caused the rift over in Mal's. I think that's part of the reason why he eventually left, was clashes with the IGL saying he wants to be playing certain positions that allow him to get stuck in, and having a star player in Exertion who also wants those star roles. So I don't know if the clash would be that heavy-handed with EliGE. I think Shuhei probably learned his lesson a little bit from trying to take some of those positions from his star player in Mal's. And I think obviously you'll have flashie and the coach on the side of EliGE. And also, why bring in a star player such as EliGE who's playing so well if you're not going to give him the positions that he's been playing so well in? So I think there's a lot of reasons, but I don't think it'll be his calling style. I think it'll be more his decision-making in the game if he's ever starting a play earlier than maybe EliGE would like to. And so those two are going to have to certainly get on the same page.
Mm-hmm. But the blueprint is there, and I think someone like Nertz, like I think we did a Liquid's episode ages ago, and I made the big point of he's like the perfect snappy lurker, the kind of aggressive lurker, and I always loved watching him play in those kind of roles instead of perhaps where he's been in Liquid. But it's whether he and EliGE can coexist, because obviously we could be role cells all we want, but in terms of how many people can call something in the early round, I do look at EliGE, Nertz, and Ultimate as three people who all kind of want to have a say. And maybe on T side that's fine, because flashie will prepare like the game plan like everyone has now. But on CT side, when you lose a round, are all three of them going to be saying, "Oh, I want to push this, I want to push that"?
I think it's mostly going to be EliGE and Suhei kind of calling some of the more openings. I would imagine Nertz would kind of be a little bit more passive to start. I don't think Ultimate will do a whole lot unless he's got a good spawn as the opper. More than anything, I think he'll be happy to let EliGE kind of take the wheel, and EliGE will be vocal at the start. You know, do this insta smoke. I want to go here. I want to take this space early on. Can we do this as a first move? He's going to be very vocal with it. And Shuhei as well. But I think those are the guys who'll be calling most of the early action. Unless Ultimate as an opera has a good spawn for something, or they have a game plan of where he's going to drop and go for a pick. But he doesn't strike me as a guy who's taken too much space at the moment from some of the early resources. But I don't think you're going to be missing it. You know, they're not going to be a quiet team in the early going with no ideas. EliGE is very, very good at that for sure.
I think the biggest thing for me with this move isn't even how EliGE will play. It's going to be how it affects Nertz and how Nertz will play around it, because EliGE is going to go for his openings, and I think he's shown over the course of the last year, 2 years basically, that he's able to actually make that work when he has the right team behind him. But as you said, Chewy also has similar mentality for going for some of these openings. So I think it really depends on how Nertz is going to play off of that, because we know that Naf can be very stable as an anchor and closing runs, but having Nertz as the person who's slotting in behind EliGE to follow up on those trades and to go in behind him for, you know, some of the aggressive moves, that is kind of what I want to see and how it pans out, because I personally just don't want to see a situation where you have EliGE going for those openers and you have Shuhei behind him, and then it's those two who are kind of pairing off for a lot of it, you know.
I'm actually excited a little bit for the versatility that's available to him. If you want to talk X's and O's in the sense that, you know, obviously your core like map control group to start rounds is generally 2 riflers and an opper. So, I mean, you can do something like what you're talking about, where you have EliGE and you have Nertz and you have Ultimate kind of working together to take a position on the map. And then if you get an opening kill, if you get a 1-for-1 trade, you have Nertz who likes to take a lot of space and then kind of pause and turn into a lurk and wait for the next moment in which he can pounce, which can be tricky, especially if EliGE is still alive. But then also the versatility of having someone like EliGE and Shuhei together and Ultimate as the opper with them, and have Nertz more of an extremity player and see if he can actually challenge and find a good timing for a one-on-one into a bomb site. Got an incredible skill set for it, so why not? So I think there's a lot of options available of how Liquid can make similar strategies very, very different by changing the personnel and the kind of style of gameplay and the differences between a Nertz and a Shuhei.
Yeah, and I was just putting it up because I wanted to remember, and it's like the EliGE of complexity in my head was always very, very good at knowing he was a star player and being kind of that second in on executes and being the one using the resources for the space taking early round, but also knowing like, I'm a better player than you, Shuhei, I'm going to be the one trading. And I think that dynamic should work out with kind of having Nertz being able to be aggressive in openings, which means that then Shuhei and EliGE are able to be a bit of a tag team duo with a kind of clear hierarchy in terms of who's making space for who. Because I think sometimes in the old Liquid, it was weird where Shui wanted to be the kind of modern IGL who's throwing a lot of the nades and not always being MSL jumping around a corner. And then you had like Twistzz and Naf entering, and it just never really looks completely right. Whereas I think having EliGE and Shui together feels like a more kind of natural entry pack in that way.
For sure. And if I had to guess, I would say that's the one we'll see more often than not, you know. But I mean, you can also do something crazy. Like if you want to do just a chaos round, you could actually have something like, you know, EliGE and Nerds working together, Shuhei and Ultimate working together on different parts of the map, both being aggressive, both trying to confuse the comms, both trying to confuse the defense. Like you can do some crazy stuff. I think there's a lot of options for the tactical minds of Shuhei, a flashie of EliGE to be able to do some really interesting stuff inside the server, which is why I think they can become a dark horse. You just don't have a whole lot of time to put it together. But, you know, at the same time, one of the other reasons I'm positive about this Liquid lineup isn't just because I'm a fanboy. It's also because when you think about it too, Flashie's coming over with all that experience under Blade. Like that dude's got a fucking foundation for a playbook, if not a playbook already made. You know, like he's got things ready to implement, waiting for a team that all 5 people are dedicated enough to each other and to the team to actually institute them. Like this could be his wet dream. Like he could actually, they could just pop off this. Like I'm actually really excited to see what this looks like. I think it'll take time. I think there'll certainly be a build-up period. But I'm excited for the potential of this roster, just like I was excited for the last one.
I think the fact that you have flashie as that backup, and also with the way that Navi worked with Ema to unlock some of his opening work as well, I think that is really going to help those. Something that I also wanted to point out, because you have EliGE coming into this role and you have flashie who's trying to implement the system, and I think that will really help him actually create the system that he's been talking about in a few interviews already, about trying to set this system and this mentality in the team. And having someone who has a similar mindset to Ema in that sense for going for these openings and trying to create that space, I think is going to really help.
I would hope, you know, one thing when I was coaching Liquid, when I was working with EliGE, one thing that I never felt like I established enough trust with EliGE to start suggesting it, but it's one thing I think would be cool if Flashie's able to do it. I always wanted to like pull EliGE back a little bit from making, you know, the first play that came to him. And, you know, if Flashie's going to have those things set up like an Ema, like with some utility, and you can pick and choose those moments better for him to pounce, I think that could make EliGE really, really feel like a whole level of different, a whole new level of special player. If he's able to be a little bit more patient and designed plays, you know, made for him.
Mm-hmm. I know no one wants to get onto the forum posts. We all want to get onto the forum
I saw
posts.
the flash. He was excited.
But one question, just very quick answer. Do you think Ultimate will be on Liquid in 2026?
To start, yes.
Okay.
Do you think he stays?
I mean, yes, but especially with Oppers, there's always the game of who are you going to get instead? So, yes, but if Monacy becomes available, you know, like, no. So, I mean, it's hard to say without. I think he will be. I don't think he's as bad as people are saying he is. I think the problem right now is, I don't know. I don't think you can plug, like, I think the last thing you'd want to do is be a gamer legion with your Opper and have 4 different Oppers in the 8 months of the year so far, the 9 months of the year so far, right? Like that's not what you want to go down. So if you're going to change your Opper, I feel like the Opper has to be a long-term play. You need to get someone in who you're going to be dedicated to being with long-term. So yeah, I think he's going to be on the team. But I don't think he's going to get swapped out for some unproven Opper that they want to try and build up again. If he gets swapped out, it's going to be for someone definitely better.
Something EliGE seemed to get on last time out.
Did they? We'll see.
Believe the vlogs.
It's time to bring OC back.
Nah.
One more time.
I'm good on that one.
Last round.
I'm good on that one. Nothing against the kid, but yeah, it's just we know if we're gonna get there. I feel you still have more upside with Ultimate at the moment.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think, as we told you before we started, we do love our little forum section at the end of the show.
Hell yeah!
Just because it's always fun to see what the HLTV forums have cooked up for any roster changes. And so we're going to start with how minus rain occurred, leak, which is just a brain rot post, really. There's nothing more I can say.
I know.
It says, Twistzz, Rain sama, I want to go back to FaZe. You. Rain, don't worry, Twistzz, I will figure it out. Twistzz, yay. Sometime later. Twistzz, I'm here, Rain sama. Rain sama, where are you? Rain slowly fading away. Whose roster spot do you think you got? Twistzz, no. Rain fades into retirement. Or BC game.
Yeah, it's something else. I check out when I see Uwu. The only Uwu I'm on board with is the rooting Uwu. That's the only one. Everything else, I'm done. I'm cooked.
He's got the lander as well. He's got the old school. His old school users denigrating the forums.
I can't believe they got 230
I also check out
upvotes
when I see it.
Yeah.
That's the part that honestly was crazy, and the reason I
scares me a
left it
little
in here,
bit.
because I cannot believe that this thread also had like something like 70 comments or something. So I don't know how people see this, and they're like, this is the thread that's doing it for me today.
Yeah, fair play. Got a little fan fiction there. Not as good as Anders and Freiberg, but it's pretty good.
True. I mean, you're the second guest to mention the HLTV fan fiction on our show after Hooch.
It's legendary. It's legendary.
We had someone bring up the conflict of interest, so we touched on a little bit. That says it's by still_no_majors who loves Nico. And it says, what a disgrace. FaZe versus Liquid tomorrow, with Twistzz already being contracted with FaZe. Why does these tier 2 tournaments give way to this shit? Do you think Twistzz will try hard to hand FaZe a disband-worthy humiliation, or will he throw like Oil Nessie? Followed by the first comment, which just says meds.
Yeah, well, that is a meds comment. The throw the Oil Nessie. Yeah, I don't know.
But also, how is he going to try and disband the team he's about to join?
Yeah.
How does this even work?
And like also,
and
like,
he gets the power back. It's Zeus posting.
You don't want to sell that game either, because I mean, outside of the professional implications, you even if you kind of half-ass it, you will get ostracized by the professional community. Nobody lets that. People really don't let that shit fly. But I mean, fair play. It was a conflict of interest.
It was.
And he's still top frags.
I guess they kind of all are whenever they happen. I think what was so shocking about this one is it's so close to like the major cutoff for the VRS implications, and Liquid was desperately battling for the spot, which made it really weird. I think it just highlighted the immediacy of the conflict was just right there in our face, you know?
And the other thing was that it was announced like during the tournament as well.
Yeah.
If they just waited to announce this move till after, nobody would have cared, I think.
They could not have, because of the roster lock for Pro League.
For EPL. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, is that if it wasn't for that, this wouldn't have been an issue at all. I think other teams would have definitely held on to this kind of announcement if it wasn't for that kind of situation.
Yep, for sure.
Don't worry, we have many more
Even
cooked
more?
up for you.
Perfect.
There's many more.
Like
There are some good ones though. There are some good ones. The first couple, they weren't amazing, but then we have FaZe Fix by NTGNTIL, who loves Maladoy, with a Brazilian flag, of course, because
Yes, naturally.
they're all behind him now.
Yeah.
That says minus karrigan ASAP, plus Rain as IGL, or even Twistzz as IGL would be better. Maybe minus Brokey and plus Jame as Opper in IGL, but as far as I remember, Jane doesn't speak good English. But I don't care, I like Brokey. I love karrigan, but Unk just doesn't got it anymore.
I'm glad this one has no upvotes. I'm glad nobody gave this any kind of credit whatsoever. That's a pair of some of the worst ideas I've ever seen. Rain is IGL and minus Brokey plus Jame. Get out.
I also liked how they followed minus Brokey plus Jame with I don't care, I like Brokey.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. This guy needs the meds comment. He needs the rebuttal.
It'll be there, I'm sure. If anyone's seen it, there'll be a meds comment. But is this just the karrigan KD thing? I know we didn't really touch on it, but it's like, do we really care about karrigan's KD? Like, I sort of... at some point, it does reach breaking point, kind of like the Hooksy G2 stuff. At some point, probably we did have to start caring, but I'm just so used to just ignoring an IGL on a scoreboard. Like, I just don't care.
I mean, you don't care about it as long as they're still placing in semifinals and being a dangerous team and looking like the FaZe of old. But now that they've stopped ever reaching that point and that pinnacle and that competitiveness, you start caring now. And I mean, that's the tightrope you walk as an IGL that doesn't really frag. And that's why we've seen most of those IGLs kind of drop out over the years, is you need to be able to produce. Everyone in every position needs to be able to produce. And karrigan's stats have always been bad, but I think he's been able to find impact kills. He's never exactly had like a crazy scoreline, individual maps here and there, but fewer and further between. The impact that you can feel when you watch him winning you a clutch, getting a double with an MP9 in a desperate situation. He's been able to do those things, but even that's dropping off now as I think more of his attention is trying to make the team work. So, yeah, I think the stats are going to start getting highlighted and pointed at more and more as it goes on.
I think that's the key, too, is that the situation also leads to those stats in a way. Like, the team is not in a good place. They're not able to actually play together properly. So obviously, naturally, karrigan's stats are going to drop off. He's not also, he's trying to make rounds work, but when the team isn't actually playing around what he's calling, it makes it very difficult to actually play well. And he's also trying to now bet in Jacob, so it's going to make it even more difficult. Yeah. He's focusing on a new player.
I mean, think about Apex in the first half of the year when he was having some of those crazy individual performances and like top fragging in some of their big playoff games and being at the top of the scoreboard. And he's just like, yeah, I have been practicing on my individual level. And it's like, yep, you get to do that when Rops joins the team and everything magically falls into place and you are just the perfect lineup within a month. Like that's the luxury that Apex gets. Not anymore though. He's now trying to get it back too.
Exactly. Well,
you can bet he's not DMing now.
No, he's probably not DMing.
As soon as the team results drop off,
he's watching demos now, for sure.
We were wondering at the start of the show who Twistzz is going to replace on FaZe, but don't worry. This forum user has our answer. It's Jacob and not Rain. Why do people seriously think Rain is kicked? By Heinz Lover, with, I'm not sure what flag this is actually. And usually I'm pretty good with flags, so...
Get back on your quizzes.
I know.
This is poor.
It says, karrigan doesn't care about trophies. He wants good vibes and his best friends in team. karrigan would divorce his wife before he kicks his best friend Rain or his son Frozen. So bye-bye, Jacob. You were really good and promising, but FaZe is nepotism heaven.
That's funny, because I had to have that line earlier where I'm like, I don't even think this is really nepotism. But here we are. Yeah, this is a wild one. I mean, I'm with him at the conclusion, not so much the reasoning. He gets to the same place that I would get to. Just everything else is a little bit wild.
I'd say the safe way to put this is that not every thread that we pull up needs a reply.
No. But it does have 3 upvotes, which is disappointing.
It does. There's a few that have more upvotes than any of these kind of threads should.
Good. Love that.
And also, obviously, with the Twistzz back to FaZe, we have the Twistzz cycle by Simple, not Simple Enjoyer. Okay, with the Polish flag, who loves Apex. Sorry, in Jodger, I should say. And it says, be in FaZe, take star rolls, drag team down, achieve nothing. Oh, I can go to Liquid, my home, heart. Take star rolls, drag team down, achieve nothing. Oh, I go to FaZe, my also home, heart. Repeat.
I mean,
did he achieve quite a lot?
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of falls really apart in the 4th line of the stanza there. He achieved pretty much everything you can achieve with a single team. Yeah.
For a sustained period, too. Won a major and everything.
Yes, he did. Grand Slam, Cologne, and Katowice. It wasn't really much left for them to be doing. However, I mean, look,
never forget for EliGE.
I don't think this is actually that unusual of an opinion on Twistzz, though, from the average fan.
It is kind of surprising. I've seen this. This was probably the 4th cycle thread that I saw that had similar sentiments. So yeah. I think you're right. It's surprising how many people seem to think that.
I think EliGE's PR took quite a big hit over this last year of Liquid, over the last 6 months in Liquid, more than anything.
EliGE's PR?
Or sorry, Twistzz PR.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like EliGE's PR actually took a bit of a hit too with his last stint on FaZe for sure.
But that was like an easy prediction when he joined the team. Like we said on Talking Counter when that move happened was like, in one sense, cool, let's see what they can do. But in another sense, like philosophically, EliGE and the rest of this team look at Counter-Strike so differently. So now EliGE is joining this team, and then you're just going to get tagged with being the one to send FaZe down the spiral when it was probably building to that moment regardless. You might have been gasoline on the fire, but, as Billy Joel would say, fire was already begun. He didn't say anything of the sort. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. We need more harmonicas in CS.
So we have FaZe Real Fix by Honest UK Guy, who loves Mezzy, Harry's alt, actually. That says Jacob, Twistzz, Rain IGL, another one of those. Degster and Frozen. And then the first comment reply just says Rain IGL and then links the logout page to HLTV.
That's a good reply. I like that.
Bans that, of course.
That, of course. That's all. That was just shared for the logout page. Really.
Actually, but there's two things I would point out in this one. Rain is IGL. Like, I think Rain actually probably has a really cool mind for an IGL, but I don't think he has the personality for it. And I would never want. I don't think he's loud enough. I don't think he's commanding enough. He's way too chill for it. But Degster is kind of a funny one.
Yeah,
I'm by no means like a Degster, like someone who's pumping for Degster to be on teams, that he's some kind of great revolutionary opper, but that dude can frag, and I'm amazed that he's been on the bench this whole year ever since winning whatever event that PGL event he won with Falcons.
Bucharest?
Was that your first Bucharest of the year?
Studio one.
Yeah. Like, it's actually crazy to me that he's not on a roster. I would imagine it's a mixture of maybe there's some personality things that I don't know about that are circulating among the pro scene. More than anything, I would say probably passport and visa difficulty is up there with it. But like, if you ever need like a short-term opper fix, I find it hard to believe there's a better option than Degster out there. You know, he's probably not the long-term solution, but get a boy and he's going to give you 25 kills.
When Complexity had to play without Hauserk at the major, I honestly thought they might get Degster in too.
Yeah, but
it could be the same thing, visa issues as well, right?
Yeah,
it could be the exact same scenario,
especially for a major in the States as well. Probably would have been easy for Degster for all May, but yeah, like if he's available for an event, like I swear he should be a go-to for an opper insert.
Also, on the Rain IGL point, he does have a great mind for the game, but karrigan has also talked in multiple interviews and like roundtable things about how Rain's the only player who doesn't have a playbook when they're playing. Like, he just doesn't have their notes and strategies. He does whatever he wants, basically, or he has stuff that he'll do on the fly, but he does not play along with any of those things. So I don't know how well those two things would fit together.
Well, some players are going to be like that, but I would also imagine for Rain, who so intuitively knows at this point what karrigan is looking for out of a round, when karrigan calls something even on the fly, I bet Rain knows exactly what karrigan wants him to do. You know, I think they're at that point in their careers, they played together for so long where it is just right there on call.
Well, it's not a problem in the sense of what Rain's doing. I just mean if he was to be IGL, that would be a little bit more difficult.
Well, you know, they did it before without notes. I'll just say this. True. I actually fucking hate notes from players and teams on tables. I think we should ban them all from the tables.
I've said the same thing and caught a lot of flack for it. But yeah, I think having like a 6-page printout is a little bit excessive.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you entirely. And I mean, I just don't. Like, I hate seeing players looking through your notes at the beginning of the game. If you guys haven't had a game plan that you made up before this, I don't care. Get out. And also, it would shock people to know how many games have been delayed like 5-10 minutes due to fucking printer errors that stop teams from printing out their strat book in time, as if they didn't come prepared an hour ahead of time to the match with it already printed out. But you would be shocked at how many times stupid fucking printer issues are delaying professional matches for this reason. That's yet another reason to just ban playbooks from the tables.
I swear there was like a tier 2. There was a tier 2 LAN in Brazil. I don't know if it was earlier this year or last year, but I swear they had like an hour-long delay because their printer jammed or something. And players couldn't print notes. It was ridiculous.
We had it a couple times at EPL with matches. I think we had it at a few big events I've seen. And every time some TO comes to me and tells me the match is delayed because some team forgot to print their notes out and the printer didn't have any paper, I'm just like, are you kidding me? In the year of our Lord 2025, we're delaying games for a printer? That's so fucked up. It's so messed up.
It's also funny.
I do kind of want to push back.
Yeah,
I'm just from the tactical dev perspective. Like, we've nerfed coaches so many times, like so many times. Like, if you don't have the notes, the coaches are going to have even less. The good coaches are going to have even less impact on games. And I don't know if
I'm down for the coaches having a notebook.
Fully want that?
I'm down for if the coaches want to have a notebook and something they can chime in and look at while they're playing and use it to chime in with the tactic during a timeout. All for that. I don't think each player should have 5, 6, 7 sheets of paper that they're flipping over and flipping through and reading in between rounds. I think teams should be prepared with the playbook they want to come into the event with. And if you can't remember the tactics that you're playing on a map, that is a player error.
It also always makes me laugh when players have these giant pages of notes and then get mad when it gets caught on broadcast by a broadcast camera or by a photographer who's
Especially
trying to
when
take
they like
photos
hold
of
it
the team.
up like this
Yep.
and they're reading it, and you're like, mate, come on now, right? What are we thinking here?
So
Always blurred.
we have a similar Twistzz cycle thread here, but this one I pulled up just because of one funny line, which is Twistzz never beating the allegations by Nicholas with a Serbian flag, and it says, joined Liquid, Stalin regime, given all freedom, almost exclusively bad moves, tried IGLing, worst period in Liquid CS history the result-wise, stopped IGLing, left.
Oh, well, he didn't live in the Stalin regime, that's for sure. Yeah, let's see. I wouldn't say almost exclusively, but actually, I think every move they made after the Cadian one was pretty fucking solid. Like what else changed? Like the Twistzz IGL one, I'm not going to talk about that one as a move. You had to put someone there, and Twistzz was the most likely for it. But then bringing in, what was the next moves was Nertz, Shuhei, and flashie as a coach.
Ultimate as well.
Ultimate as well, who was a fucking
better than people thought.
Baller as hell for like the first 2 months, and now he's been serviceable, but not a bad move by any stretch of the imagination. So I would say
it's also so contextualized by hindsight, because everybody was thinking Cadian's a good move for Liquid.
Yeah,
and everyone was calling for Chewy, and now everyone looks at it and they're like, "Wow, Twistzz did an awful job."
Yes, yeah, it is using a lot of hindsight goggles on this one for sure.
I will say, Stalin regime is just funny though.
It's
the first time I've ever seen that.
It's not bad, yeah. Especially knowing Twistzz, he's very far from that kind of an attitude about how he's going to run a team. I think it's not bad.
And then lastly, we have Twistzz Fate by E_that_Brokey fan. I think they missed a letter on their keyboard.
Yeah.
Who loves Brokey? And this one I brought up purely because Harry's girlfriend is vegetarian as well. Or vegan.
Sure.
And this says, Twistzz Fate, from playing with Musketeers to competing in 15K prize pool tournaments. And there's just a reply from Raw Force, who's obviously banned now with the British flag, that says if Liquid took him to a Texas smokehouse, he'd be back to 1.8 rating, but he's too busy eating kale and tofu.
But he makes a great point, this banned user. He does make a really good point. If he wasn't vegan, he'd be headshotting.
He's still headshotting. I'm just not having
this. What backs up this theory? I need you to back up this theory now that you're giving it credence.
Look, protein's important to various bodily function and performance endeavors that you go through in a normal span of life. I don't know, man. Like, I'll say this: Twistzz, it's not veganism, but his diet probably is a very difficult thing when he's traveling to all these countries to adhere to. That takes a lot of energy when you're traveling. So there is. I'm not going to say it's diminishing his performance at all or anything like that, but I imagine there's been some events where being able to find the proper dietary things have caused some problems for him, some issues for him.
Someone should count how many chips he eats in a year. So fries. How many fries does he eat in a year?
There's some places where it's really all you can eat. That's back in the day when we used to go to events, like before all like the catering improved and before the TOs started finding better ways of getting better food in, you would go to events and just be like my first Cologne I worked, I ate cheese sandwiches 5 days in a row. That was it. It was just 2 pieces of bread and cheese. That was it. That's all I ate for 5 days. And like, I bet Twistzz has had those events where he's just like, oh, there's no vegan options in this area or this country, and nobody really speaks all that well of English, so I'm just going to be eating French fries and potatoes for a week.
When we were in Serbia for the award show, Harry's girlfriend literally had to eat McDonald's fries for like 3 meals, straight up.
Do you remember that our McDonald's Uber Eats didn't arrive because the driver cancelled? So we just walked around Serbia in like award shows gear
attire
until we found one place, and there was just like a Vegansky burger in a massive sign, and it might have been the best moment of my life, to be honest. But we did it. Even Belgrade has something.
Serbia's got to be a hard place to be a vegetarian. The meat there is so damn good.
But it's so great for visas. So it is. See you there in January.
It's just holding Counter-Strike together at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think that's all for the threads. I hope you enjoyed the segment.
I mean, I've seen enough HLTV forum insanity over the years, so I thought we were going to get worse.
Really? Okay.
The worst
mean-
ones get deleted before No could find them. If we're honest.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
These are the ones that are left up.
I had to crawl back through like over a week's worth of threads, so I will be expensing my counseling bill to HLTV after this
Absolutely.
for that.
You're gonna
Go
have
to
to.
HR.
But yeah, overall, I think we covered Twistzz and EliGE quite a bit. I think more EliGE than I expected to in the end, but I think it helped illustrate just how much this move could help both sides, really. Moses, is there anything you wanted to leave with, any closing thoughts before we end the show?
No, I got nothing. I think we kind of nailed it. I think EliGE Twistzz was probably the big news of the week, even with the event going on. I say it's kind of a bummer. I mean, it feels like felt like it was going to be such a cool event, and this news comes out, and then like two of the teams that are there competing feels like, I mean, at least you saw the Liquid VRS thing, but it was like, oh, like it kind of diminishing watching the team to a certain extent. But I don't know. I'm excited for both teams' futures. I think Liquid's future to me feels more positive than FaZe's, but FaZe's is definitely going to improve with Twistzz in the roster.
Harry, any closing thoughts?
No, I think we've done it. I think we've covered it. But yeah, Matt told me off last time, and so did Dimitri actually. And I will have something behind me at some point, because Dimitri got very upset with me about how boring my room was last year. But I've moved house. There's a bookshelf. It doesn't have shelves on it yet.
It's got a
It
CS
will.
case on it. It looks great.
It will. Yeah.
Hey,
There it
I
is.
got the Baron wall as
Proof
well
I
too,
went to
man.
Shanghai.
Don't get fucking shamed into putting things on your wall.
I know. And people know about your personality, and then it's just there's
Can't have
attacks
that.
coming.
Can't have that.
Can't have that.
No.
Just have a map of the British Empire. That'll do. That'll be fine.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you don't already, you can follow us on Spotify as well for the audio only listeners, and for anybody who wants to just listen in the background, even though we have visual aids, but you don't always need to watch them. So thanks for watching.